Hi, my name is Lavinia Masters, and I am an advocate for survivors of sexual violence. And I'm also a survivor myself. My journey began when I was 13 years old. I was violently raped in the privacy of my home. Someone broke into our home in the middle of the night and raped me at knife point. It was a horrific experience to have to endure as a child and not knowing who or where or why I was even chosen for something like this to happen to. My life had began spiraling out of control, as I would say, at 13 years old, because I didn't know where to begin. I didn't even know that I needed to heal. I didn't even know that I could even pick up the pieces of my life once after something so heinous as rape happened to me. I began my journey anyway, but I didn't begin the journey until I was married. And I was married in 1990. And at a young age, I was having children, trying to provide for a husband, and I knew something was absolutely not right with me. I know I had tried to commit suicide in my youth. I had went through a lot of troubling factors, fighting in school, just issues after issues, and I still didn't attribute that to the sexual assault. I just attributed to me being angry about the things that happened to me and felt that my life was just not my life anymore, and I had no control of it. But fast forward to being married and realizing that something was wrong, something had to change about me, definitely to save my marriage and to seem normal for my child that I had. I began a journey of trying to self heal because I didn't have the resources. I didn't have anyone to reach out and say, okay, Lavinia, you were a victim. You should seek counseling, or you should, try some sort of therapy or anything. I was felt like I was in the world all by myself. My husband told me to go back to my first love, which was my faith in God. And I began to pray and meditate. And during my prayer and meditation, I also began to write because I love writing poetry and I love writing, period. And as I wrote my poetry, I realized I was expressing the anger and the frustration, what I had been through as a child. As I watched the readings that I wrote for myself, I understood that this is something that I needed to deal with. So I began a journey of self-healing, and the journey was long and it was tedious. Uh, and like I said, I had my faith in God. For some, that's enough. That's all I had. For some, they go through therapy. They have, all kind of things they can do. And I had my husband to talk to through the process, and I'm grateful for that. But it was very tedious. As I moved through this process over the years, from 1990 to 1996, I decided that I wanted to know more about me. I wanted to understand me more and what was happening with me. And so 1996 to, I want to say, 2000, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to move forward with this. I'm ready to see how I can help someone else with my processes and how to help heal. I didn't know where to begin because I didn't see anybody talk about sexual violence. I didn't see anybody just openly come up to you and say, "Hey, this is what you do. This is how you do it." Even when you watch movies, you would notice in the movies it was like segment or a the motive was you knew it was assault happening, but they just didn't outright say it was a sexual assault that happened. And so my mind was like, okay, this is like a secret. This is like a stigma for society to talk about rape. And I have to change that. I have to stop that because this is why I suffered so long as a victim because nobody talked about it. Nobody was there to even have that conversation with me. And I had to figure out a way. So fast forward to 2003, 2004, I wanted to know whatever happened to my case because for so long I had almost detached myself from reality of wondering, did it really happen that night? The police, when they came that night, they asked me three very troubling questions that still are etched in my mind today. They asked me, am I sure it wasn't my boyfriend? Am I sure I didn't allow them, let him in the window? And I'm sure I'm not having sex and don't want my mother to know. That was very disheartening because I didn't realize at that moment they were planting a seed of not believing me. And as I grew older and began to try to understand sexual violence and the effect it had on me, I realized that that's exactly what happened. And maybe that's why my case, was basically nowhere because nobody believed in this little 13-year-old girl had been brutally raped in her the privacy of her home. So I reached out to the Dallas Police Department in 2004 about the rape kit because the Dallas Police Department had started a initiative called CCAP, and they did this based on the Debbie Smith Act, where funding was provided to open up rape kits nationwide or pay for rape kits. But the stipulation was the victim or the survivor had to reach out themselves to have their kit open. The money was just not free fall, which I thought was ridiculous, but I digress. But anyway, so when I saw this, it was a small ad. When I saw this small ad, I knew it was a confirmation from God to move forward with this. So I contacted them. Sergeant Welsh at the time was a detective that worked these cold cases, and we met after a period. It was a couple of months that passed, but we finally met. We did the buccal swab. I was told that Lavinia, even though we are gathering your evidence now, we may not get anything from your perpetrator if he's not in CODIS or if he's not a felon. And I didn't understand that. I'm like, what do you mean? And so once he broke it down to me and the definition of that, I was fine with that because I was finally at a place in my life where I was trying to get answers, or somebody was trying to believe in me and my story and even validate within myself that this really happened to me. He also shared with me that I missed two statute of limitations. The first one was 5 years after the initial assault, and then 10 years after my 18th birthday. So he said, if we did find him, you wouldn't be able to prosecute. And I said, okay, that's fine as well. But I also knew in that moment and in those conversations with talking with Sergeant Welsh and other members of the team, the Dallas Police Department, that I had work to do. I knew this was part of my calling. I knew that it was something greater for me to do when it came to victims of sexual violence, because learning that your evidence has been sitting on a shelf since 1985 and not processed, especially as a child of a heinous crime, is very disheartening, and it's very disappointing to know this is how our justice system treat individuals that have been violently raped. And so I knew I had work to do. Uh, I didn't see it bigger than me. I was not afraid to tackle it. I just knew I had to do it. And I made a determination that this would not happen to another little girl or anybody as long as I'm alive, because I'm going to make noise about it. So I began making noise. My case was finally solved. It took a little bit over a year to solve my case, and we found my perpetrator. He was a serial rapist, and he was, at the time, he was in prison for the second time, and he was about to come up for parole again. And the sad part about it was he had been out before uh, for sexual assault on other women, and for 10 years in the state of Texas, he was in their prison system. They released him knowing his crimes, and he got out and did the same MO. Came in and raped someone at knife point in their home. This time it was an elderly woman, and my mindset was, oh no, this cannot happen again. So I began to fight. I wrote letters to the president. I wrote letters to legislation. I went and knocked on legislators' doors because I'm like, look, do you know what's happening in America? Do you know that people are being raped, that these people are not being tagged as sex offenders, that we have no more statute of limitations, we have no options, and they're just out here doing what they want to do. They're not being held accountable for their crimes. What can we do? With my plight and my speaking, Sergeant Welsh continued to use me with the Dallas Police Department as a voice. And then Wendy Davis picked me up. She saw me to help. At the time, she was one of the state senates here in the state of Texas. And I began to travel and speak with her. We tried to move the statute of limitations for all rape victims. Of course, that was shot out, and that didn't work. But still, we spoke, and we spoke for victims of sexual assault. And then after Wendy Davis, she went for the bid against Governor Greg Abbott. She lost, and she turned me on to Victoria Niave. And at that moment, when I met Victoria, it was like full force, head on. We began to fight for the things that happened to me and how we can make it better for other survivors of sexual violence that have been victims of the rape kit. We understood that there was a backlog, about 500,000 nationwide and about 20,000 statewide in the state of Texas. And that was just devastating. That blew me out of the water to know that many victims were sitting somewhere thinking that their crimes were being solved, or maybe you were still looking for the perpetrators and they were just waiting on answers. And to know that someone could still be trapped in that fear, that loneliness, that discouragement was unacceptable for me. So when Victoria and I met, we first started with the driver's license initiative, where you can donate to try to clear the backlog of rape kits in the state of Texas. And that still runs today, where people still donate to that. But we know we needed more. So she formed a task force. And in this task force is when I came in contact with the Turning Point. Wendy Hanna, she's the CEO director of the Turning Point. And we were on this task force, and we were coming up with the ideas, and we were putting things together. And it was just magic in the making of doing it and trying, because we were collectively fighting for victims and being a voice for them. Even though I knew there was nothing I can do for my case or my law, it was not about me anymore at this point. It was about future generations. It was about other lives. It was about other souls that were lost. It was about children that were out there suffering, and other adults. And I'm like, this has to be done. So with that, we came up with House Bill 8. And House Bill 8 basically changed the statute of limitations on these for the rape kit backlog, to curb or eradicate the rape kit backlog. And what happens now is within 90 days, they have to process these rape kits. And the clock does not start until the DNA is actually ran. And that's how I missed out on my statute of limitations. It was the date of my assault when my clock started, but now the clock does not run until the DNA is actually ran. And when that DNA is ran, they then have 50 years to try to find the perpetrator. So it was an amazing feat. But what was beautiful about it was, now we have the Lavinia Masters Act, because it was House Bill 8, the Lavinia Masters Act. It was named for me in the work that I've done, which was an honor that I can't even still grasp today, because I was not expecting that. I was not looking for any kind of notoriety. I wasn't looking for anything out of it. I was just looking to help others. As a matter of fact, I told Victoria them I didn't want it named after me, because honestly, I'm a black girl. I was a black girl, a black woman, and I just felt that that would put a stain on it. And then being a woman, and because I know how it can be for women to fight. But unanimously, the House and the Senate, it passed. Victoria and the entire task force was so sure, and that's exactly what happened. And so House Bill 8, the Lavinia Masters Act, went into effect September the 1st, 2019. I was the first African American woman in the state of Texas living to have a law named after me. As a matter of fact, I found out in the United States to have a law. And so it was not only women history, it was Black history, it was just sexual assault survivors history, period. And that's what was so amazing, to be a part of that. And it's been such a blessing to share and just be a part of it, and sharing with the Turning Point, and being invited to be a part of the board here, and just to interact with so many wonderful and beautiful people that have the same passion to fight for others, those who can't really fight for themselves, and to interact with others. And it has just caused such a great trip effect on me in my life, and so many awards and recognitions. The Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award, and here last year I was inducted to the Texas Women Hall of Fame with the Miss Opal Lee, and it's just been amazing. And I continue to fight. I continue to work. I value what I do. I value survivors and their voices. I try to educate, enlighten, and let them know they have the same power that I have, because I came up from nothing, just out of the blue, saying no, something has to change. And that's the message I want to continue to portray to everyone. You have that same power, that same voice to say something has to change. You have to be sick and tired of being tired of how things are going. And that's what I was. I was tired of it. I'm like, there's no way you can tell me that victims go through so much trauma, and we sit idly by and do nothing about it. So this is how the Lavinia Masters Act was born. This is how as my husband say, Lavinia beast mode has started, because I'm really a beast in this industry when it comes to victims and survivors of sexual violence. And I love speaking at colleges and universities and young folks, and just sharing my story and sharing resilience and empowering them and letting them know they can do the same exact thing that I've done, and that's change, make a change, and it's within all of us. And I'm just honored to be a part of the whole trajectory of it all.